Welcome in. It is day 190, and you're speaking to the Meeples Champion. And today, we're going to be jumping into a newer game. This is a game I actually got probably about a month, almost 2 months ago, possibly. It's in that range. It was one that had kind of both its predecessor and itself were both on my list for a while. And I ran into it one day in a store and just had a little bit of cash to burn and said, you know what? Let's pick it up. Well, I played it this week with my friends. Turned out it was pretty fun. The game is Lizard Wizard. Now, if you've played Raccoon Tycoon, it's from the same company. From what I understand, it's roughly the same game. I have not had the chance to play that one yet, but obviously, Lizard Wizard, Raccoon Tycoon, they're going with an animal and a rhyme. It's the basics. So, the concept of this game is that you have mana. That is your starting money. And you're dealt 3 of these cards, which are going to show you resources on the top and on the bottom. You have 7 resources in the game that are on this chart, and it ranks from 1 all the way up to 12. Everything at the beginning, it's just going to be randomly picked. A couple of them get put up a spot. And then beyond that, when you start playing in the game, the idea is that on your turn, you can cash one of your cards in. However many resources are on the top, you get to have 3 of them. So if you have 3, you're getting all 3. But if you have 4 or 5, you're picking out of those, which of the 3 you want. You grab those and add them to your pile. And then on the resources on the bottom, you're moving these up on the chart. As the game progresses, at certain times you can choose to sell. So if you do, you take everything of that one resource, you sell it at the cost. So if you've got your mushrooms up to $6 a piece or 6 mana a piece, and you've got 5 of them, you're going to get 30 mana, but they're also going to move it down 1 space per the resource you sold. So you'll get them at the cost of 6 each one, but they're going to reduce by 5. So now the next person wants to sell, it's back down to 1 again. So you're going to do this. You're going to be basically making a decision. Whenever you use your card, you get to immediately draw a new one. So that's your basics. That's what you know you can do every turn. Beyond there is where it gets interesting. So you have multiple spots on the board. You have your towers. The towers are going to be set up where there is going to be, I believe, there's 6 different pieces of basically houses that you can be joining. So they're all mixed together. When one's up, you can either pay its cost by paying the resources it requires, or you can pay the gold it requires. You get a tower, it gets added to your area, that's it. Doesn't do anything particularly special outside of when you are going to use one of your cards. A tower will in its corner have some kind of a resource that it will pay out. It really won't do anything additional besides just be something there for points, which I'll explain a little bit later. Then there's the wizards. Now the wizards have 2 that are showing, and the interesting part is that when you want a wizard, you actually start a bid. And unlike these other people's turns, when you pick wizard, until you get a wizard, you keep getting to go again. So that means if I choose wizard, I'll put a bid in mana, and all you have to do is outbid it by 1. You keep going around. If somebody passes, they're permanently out. But once you got down to the winner, if it's not the original person who picked for their turn, they get to go again. They can choose any of the other actions, or they can bid on another one of the wizards. So for instance, in our first bid, it actually went 8 times before the original person finally won. They really wanted somebody of those, so they just kept going. So you all bid your amounts. Whoever has the highest amount wins. Everybody else keeps their mana. This is not a situation of you bid so you lose. If you're bidding and you don't make it, you keep everything that you were bidding. So these are also going to have the houses in their corners. But on top of that, they're also going to have one of the 7 resources in the other corner. So when you decide to turn a card in, you'll pick 3 of the resources available on the top, plus you get a resource of that type additional to this. Now you start off at the beginning of the game with a max of being able to hold 10 in your hand, but with every tower you get, you increase that max by 1. So as you're balancing this out, you might be able to get a good combination of towers and wizards to allow it. So now you're holding, say, 15 in your hand, and when you go and you use one of those cards, now you're drafting also like the 3 from the card and maybe an additional 3. You can really build those resources quick. Now below those are the spell cards. They all cost 5 mana, and they tend to be either you're going to get a one-time only use, or you're going to get a card that is repetitive for the rest of the game. Now, either way, when you buy a spell card, you have the option to pay for that spell card right then. Meaning, you pay your 5 mana, you own it. But if you own it, you're just putting it face down. But it below will have a resource requirement to activate the spell. If you pay those, you have the right to do it right away. And instead of putting it face down, you'll put it face up. If it's a one time only, you have to immediately use this effect. You're done. If it's a repetitive, it's now active. So whenever the repetitive would activate, you can use it. So these are going to be worth 1 point for the end of the game. And there is additional points to these, but we'll get to that later. Then you have your familiars. Now, the familiars are interesting. You have, again, just like everything else, they're going to be grouped up with the symbol for the house types. You're going to mix these up in groups going from 5 to 10 to 15 to 20 to 25 for their value of mana. You have to shuffle up their individual groups and stack them in that order. When they come out, you pay the mana requirement to get them. And then below, they have 4 options, and you only can pick one, and it has to be immediate. So, for instance, you could activate the ability to immediately be able to buy or pay the cost to use spells, at which point you can use whatever the spells are, or you can use it to go off and immediately go buy a spell, or you can use it to go enter the dungeon, which we'll get to next, or you can use it to collect gold. This is the only way outside of a spell or something special like going to the dungeon to collect gold. And the gold will be you get 1 gold per symbol, like the symbol that is in that particular familiar's corner, including that familiar. So you're getting 1 gold no matter what. But if you've been collecting a bunch of the same house and you go, oh, well, I've got a tower, I've got 2 wizards, and I've got a spell with that symbol, well, yeah, there's 4 plus the familiar. Now you're getting 5 gold for using that ability. And there's multiple of those familiars throughout these. So every time you're getting it, you could stack it and be like, I got this one, so it's 5. I got this one, so it's 6. I get that one, now it's 7. I get this one, now it's 8. You could really build on that. So it's a pretty powerful one because gold is worth 1 victory point per gold at the end of the game. It's a straight victory point setup. Whereas the mana, while it's useful to buy everything, is worth nothing at the end. So that's a big one to have. Now, we talked about going into the dungeon. This is important because when you go to the dungeon, this is basically the setup of the dungeon is it is a luck situation. It is a test your luck, see how far you can go. You draw from the dungeon, you can get just a treasure card, which will say rubies or diamonds or something like that, or you can get a treasure card that has gold on it. Now, the rubies and all that are great because they count as one of your treasure cards, and at the end of the game, the person with the most treasure cards and the second most treasure cards will get bonus victory points. But that's all they help you for is that count. Whereas the gold not only counts for the count there, but then also gives you additional gold. However, you have to stack these. You don't get them right away. Whenever you draw a monster, it's a hit. So if you get a hit, you only could take 2. If you take 2 hits, everything gets lost and goes back into the dungeon. So you draw, you draw, you draw, eventually you get a monster, and now you have to start making the decision. Do I want to draw again? It's a risk. When you finally make the decision to stop, if you haven't drawn 2 monsters yet, then all of the gold, all of the other treasures come to your hand, but the monster gets put back into the deck, meaning that now the next person to go into the dungeon, the odds are worse. The dungeon is basically getting looted throughout the game, and the more that people grab loot, the more monsters are going to be in there to be able to kill you. You don't have a way of killing them off normally. There are certain spells and such that'll let you be able to take things out, but there's also spells that will put in even bigger monsters to be able to mess with people. So if you notice somebody is just killing it in the dungeon, you could say, okay, I'm going to add a trap card by using this spell. And now there's a trap card that counts as a 2-hit. And that's going to be really tough to dodge. So that's the basics there. Now let's get back to some of these cards and talk about the point value. The tower and the wizard are worth no points. But if you get one of each, now it's worth 5 points. And if you get one of each and each of them has the same matching house symbol, now they're worth 10 points. And if you have a duo that has the same matching house symbol and you get a spell that is the same house symbol, instead of the spell being worth 1 point, by matching up with a duo like that, it becomes worth 5 points. So it can be a 15-point trio. It's a great combination to get, but you got to be careful because if you're going too hard for trying to get your points, you may not be able to use your cards properly to actually do other things in the game. So it's best to try to balance those out. Well, we've gone over the majority, if not most, of this game. Why don't we jump in? Let's talk about the game and see where it ranks with our 7 categories. Fingers crossed it won't take us too long to jump through today. When it comes to that art, The game in and out of the box is really nice. I know this tends to be a Barnes and Noble type exclusive game. This is where I really primarily see it, just like Raccoon Tycoon was. But it grabbed my eye immediately, and I was like, "What is that game?" And I couldn't help but buy it finally. I had to give in because it just has such a beautiful cover. I love it. It's a thumbs up. The components. When it comes to those components, you're primarily talking about cards. The majority of this game is cards, but there are some small cardboard pieces for your gold, for your mana, and for your 7 different types of your resources. Everything's really good quality. Not to mention, not only is the board nice, but you have these really good trays that are in there holding everything that come out and you can use it that way as well. It's got to be a thumbs up. Your price. It is pricey. I'm not gonna lie. This is a $60 game, and it's a heavy box. When it comes to the price, like I said, primarily this is a Barnes and Noble game. And that makes sense because along with that, where can you find it is the who will play with you. And for me, this is a game that I just played at my group game, my gamer group, and we had a good time. It wasn't one of our favorites, but we all agreed like, that this is probably a solid, depends on the person. I ranked it as a 7. For me, I consider a 7 to be I liked the game and I would be okay with playing it again. A lot of them ranked it as a 5, which for them the 5 is how they rank it that way. So basically we thought of it the same, we just have different assessments of our numbers. So we all liked the game and would be willing to play it again. It's just unlikely we would choose it for a game group night. But when it comes to this game, I feel like my family and my friends outside of game night are going to love this game. So it's worth the price because it's going to be able to be played a lot. Thumbs up. Your difficulty, jumping right back into that. Who's going to be able to play this? Well, I think that this game is going to be a really good game for the beginners and for the experienced players, which is the majority of players. Experts, I think they can appreciate it and they might like a game like this that they can introduce to their families. And kids, I think that they would love the concept. It might be a little bit tough for them to follow if they're not playing other games already. But if they are already started out and you're at 10 years old and you look at this, I don't think it's too much. But they may not completely understand all the corners of it right away. That being said, it's got to be a thumbs up. Replayability. I can tell you that if we had had the time, I would have asked to play it right away again. Despite it being a little bit long of a game, probably about an hour and a half, it's an hour and a half game that I could easily see on a game weekend with friends or a trip with family playing back to back. It is not an exhausting game, and you could see so many different strategies to go for. I really like that about it. So that was big for me. And on top of that, it's one that I definitely can see that I'll probably add into my local family get togethers. Now, I say local only because the game box is heavy. This is not a light game. So while I will pack games in the past to bring, say, to Mexico when I go to see my wife's family to play with them, I can't with this one. Not only is it going to take up a majority of the weight for my suitcase, but I can't get rid of the box and bag everything like I've done with other games to reduce the size they're taking up. This box takes up every inch of its space. It really can't be reduced any more than it already is. It's just a big game. So I think it has plenty of replayability. I just am realizing it's going to be a continental replayability. It's not going to have that intercontinental bringing along with me. So thumbs up. Your keys to victory. So we played our game 5-player, and every player I felt went in a different direction. One person was going in the direction of, okay, I got a spell card. It's letting me have way more advantage in the dungeon, and they just racked up in the dungeon. Another person, they had put together a really good set with going after the same house for their ability for getting the money, and they kept on drafting more familiars, and they were racking up the gold. In my case, I started the game off by making sure to go for, I did mention earlier, there are 4 different first person to achieve it gets a 10-point bonus cards. I got 2 of them. Another person got 2 of them. So I got those early and then adjusted my thing and basically made sure that I got combinations of the trios. So I ended up getting 4 of those combos, which gave me 60 points, which is a mega hit. And there's so many more because You can choose to just be trying to take the spells. Yeah, they're 1 point apiece, but they can mess with people. I only had 4 spells, but they were all powerful spells. They were one-time use only. One of them was, if somebody wants to use something that's a negative effect on you, this spell will go away and the negative effect doesn't work. But it's a face-up spell. So essentially, it made everybody just ignore me because they were like, I don't want to waste my spell on them. I don't want to have to go spend all this and do nothing. So I just got ignored and they used their spells on each other. So it was a great defense. So there's a great way to go through your spell deck. And as you're getting these spells, there's 4 available face up. Plus, you can always sweep and get a new 4 and pick from them. There's plenty of ways to go in there and affect how you're going to draft. I saw plenty of options here. I think that there is definitely lots of keys to victory. It's got to be a thumbs up. Finally, unique. Now, off the bat, this game is obviously the follow-up to Raccoon Tycoon. I'm pretty sure that the animal and the rhyme on the front aren't the only things that are the same. It's roughly the same game. So I understand that from what I've heard for reviews and talked to those who have played that first game. And I have to consider that as a legit thing and say that that would cost this the unique. On top of that, the track at the top that follows all of these different resources, it's a very commonly used stock market tracker. I've seen this in other games. I know that this is not unique. And the cards down below, I've seen combos of stuff like this. Definitely Lords of Waterdeep has a bit of a feel like this, where depending on where you go, you touch different decks on the board. Now, that was a worker placement to activate, whereas this was just your choice. But I definitely could see that. So I don't think this is unique because of both those factors. So I got to give it its 1 thumbs down. Overall, what do I think? I think this game was definitely worth your time. If you've got a game group, if you've got a family group, if you've got friends outside of your game group, and you're looking for something that you want to get that can really touch all 3 groups, I think this one has that possibility. But at the very least, it should hit for one of them, as long as you're okay with a game like this. Not a light game, but not a heavy game. This is, for me, on that 1 to 5 scale, I'd say at the best, this is a 3. It's probably 2 to 2.5-ish. It's got lots of things going on there, but I don't feel like it's too complicated to scare people away. And that's what you're looking for. So I recommend, I think it's an absolute must buy for those situations. It's not a must play. I don't think for those people you have to go just play the game. I think it's you want to go buy it, go buy it. But it's not one that I feel like if I didn't play it in my life, I'd be upset. But it is one that I feel like if you get a chance to add to your collection because you have that type of a scenario, you won't be upset by it. Well, it has been day 190, and we've been speaking about the game Lizard Wizard. And you've been speaking to the Meeples Champion. Like, share, subscribe, and check down below in the description. I'll be adding an Amazon link in case you want to get this game for your collection. Until next time, I'll talk to you tomorrow.